Welcome to the Gospel Liberty Podcast. Thank you for joining us for another episode. What is ministry? You hear that word thrown around a lot in Christian circles. Outside of Christian circles, the only time I ever really hear it is like the prime minister, or in other countries sometimes you hear the Ministry of Defense or the Ministry of whatever it is, because originally, that term was used because ministry means service. And it was thought the purpose of civil government is to serve the interests of the Lord first and foremost, and then serve the interests of the people as the civil government is under Jesus Christ. So that's where that prime minister comes from, the first minister. Yes. The first servant. Who is serving the Lord and then serving others. But when Christians say it, most of the time, what do they mean?
How are you serving in your church? I mean, what ministry are you involved in your local church? Or, if you're a pastor, or if you're some women's ministry leader or children's ministry coordinator.
So it's kind of segregated to explicitly spiritual things. Or you hear even a pastor can be called a minister. A pastor can be called a minister. But do you ever hear someone who's not a pastor called a minister, except for the prime minister? Have you ever heard that before?
No. And again, to go back to your main point, I don't think I've ever heard anyone say that word who isn't a Christian. Right.
Unless it's a civil government, of course, like we were just talking about.
Yeah.
So when people think of ministry, what ministry is, it's just, once again, it's service. And in a Christian context, it's service to Christ and it's service to other people. So our contention in this podcast, our main point, is that we need a broader understanding of what ministry is. So often you hear if someone loves Christ, or the person is concerned about holiness and loves the scriptures, oh, you should go into the ministry. Oh, then I was doing full-time ministry. And we have, of course, a lot of people would say they know that at the Reformation, Martin Luther helped to get rid of the divide between the clergy and the lay people, and that every vocation is holy, and that you're not doing anything extra special if you are a minister or a pastor, whatever it is. But I think that so often people say that, but when it's all said and done, they still separate things into the ministry, the quote unquote, the ministry, and then people just doing other things that are so much less important. Yeah. When really all of life is ministry.
Yes.
All of life should be service to Christ and service to other people.
And I think that is just to the point of dualism, right?
Yes.
It's like I feel good about this ministry, or I feel good about serving these people, or just this is what the Lord has called me to, and it's all just like the spiritual realm, rather than seeing that it's all of life is all for the Lord.
Yes.
And just to be thoughtful of Him in all areas of life, and all areas of service to those around us. And I mean, obviously we'll get into it more, but I think the dualism has really crept into it, to make it like this, this is just a spiritual category.
Yes. And all of life is spiritual. I think, so many people, they try to say that there's a difference between the spiritual and the physical, but really the difference is between the physical and the non-physical, or the immaterial and the material, because physical things are spiritual. The Lord created matter. He created physical things, and the Lord is spiritual.
Yes.
And people are physical. Our bodies are physical, but yet we are spiritual beings. So physical and spiritual are not in contradiction with each other. What is in contradiction is material and immaterial. So when we think of what is spiritual, well, something very spiritual can be eating, it can be drinking, it can be exercising, it can be doing laundry. or shoveling rock, or cleaning your house, or mowing the lawn in your backyard, shoveling your driveway with snow, whatever. Those are very spiritual activities because they're either done with a Christward focus and in worship to Christ, or they're done in worship to yourself, or in worshiping some other false god. So all of life is spiritual.
For sure.
And all of life can be ministry if we're understanding rightly that our whole lives are to be lived in service to the Lord and in service to other people. So often people use this phrase, and I talk to some these people on a regular basis who say, "Oh yeah, back when I was doing ministry," and then I know what they mean. There's talking about these different people who say that are talking about formal pastoral ministry, or maybe they were in a full-time vocation where they were working for a missionary organizations, or involved in some other explicitly spiritual task. But we should be thinking of fatherhood as ministry. We should be thinking of motherhood as ministry, as being a husband, and being a wife, being a child, and being a worker in the marketplace, and all of the tasks that are associated with that, even doing school. All of this we should be thinking about in terms of ministry and service to Christ and others.
No, amen. I think this is very important, and excited to keep chatting about it, because I think that exactly what you're saying. It's so often that it's just, some people might use it as I'm in the ministry, and look at me. But it's even right there, and their heart or external vibe of the person is already showing that they're wanting to say that to prop themselves up, as if it's some this lofty position
extra righteous
of
thing.
Look at me, and I was in the ministry, and I served in this area. But rather, that's exactly the opposite of what the role is, based on what we were just discussing. I mean, it's a servant, it's a service, title. It's not this, and look at this is just amazing that I led this or that or whatever. So I think that it's so good to be thoughtful of that. Ministry is and can be in all of life, and in every different avenue that the Lord has each and every person in for the season of life that they're in. It's not just for some people in some positions, so that they might get the glory, but rather all of it is for Christ's glory.
Yes.
And everyone is in ministry of some sort.
Yes, because so often they can, like you said, they're using that to try to build their righteousness resume, or they feel, or people who aren't in a type of, full-time paid quote unquote ministry work, like a full-time pastor or a full-time missionary might think, I'm doing something less because I'm not doing that particular thing, when really the Lord wants to use each and every person in his or her vocation to serve Christ and to serve the world.
Amen. Yeah. And I think that I always want to, if you ever talk to someone, or, I used to be a pastor, or, I was leading this ministry at my church, but, they decided to go elsewhere, or whatever. But it's I so want to encourage those people that they're not done. The Lord isn't done with them just because, they're no longer in that position of leadership.
You're still in ministry.
You're still in ministry.
Yes.
The Lord is still going to use you in your life. You can be very intentional and beg the Lord to help you, and that your heart would be in the right spot, obviously. But it's not just, I no longer have this title. I no longer have this position. Therefore, great, what am I doing in life? And this is just terrible because I just have nothing to live for anymore.
Amen. Nope, exactly. Yeah, and so often this dualism, like what you're talking about before, it's what leads people to neglect tasks that the Lord wants them to do in order to truly minister, because they think that something else is more important, and then they're neglecting their primary responsibilities. And a good example of that is, say, a pastor who spends so much time with other people in the church or whatever, in the neighborhood, and yet his own family is getting neglected, or is being deprioritized. but he's, I'm doing the Lord's work. I might miss family worship again tonight. I haven't really been spending that much time with my kids, with my wife, and serving those in my family, but I'm doing the Lord's work because, Bill down the street really needs me tonight, or whatever it is. And, then the wife is starting to get sad and the kids miss their dad, but you guys are being selfish because I'm doing ministry. It's like, no, you have the ministry of marriage and family as your first priority, after your own soul. Of course, our own souls need to be right with Christ, but then in unselfishness that spills out into, first and foremost, our wives or our husbands and our children. And Voddie Baucham has an entire chapter in his book, What He Must Be If He Wants to Marry My Daughter, called The Ministry of Marriage, about how much this topic is neglected, that people see only what they're doing on Sundays or what they're doing with their church communities or whatever it is as ministry, instead of seeing, okay, right when I wake up in the morning, I am a minister. How am I ministering with how I do I make my bed? Am I cleaning up my bathroom sink? What am I eating? How am I doing my workout? I'm doing private worship, and then I'm going to my job if I'm a provider, if I have a job, and then I'm doing that to the glory of Christ. I'm coming home, I'm doing my activities, I'm spending time with my family. All of that is ministry, and we really need to get away from thinking that it's not, because that's when all of these other areas get neglected, like sports and politics and economics and art and architecture, because people aren't thinking of it. How can I minister in this realm? How can I serve Christ, and how can I serve others? Because it's all related to Christ.
No, amen. Yeah, and I think that if Christians, would lean on other Christians more, and in conversation and encouragement, not only people at like your own local church, but just all Christians in whatever circles that you're in, primarily in your neighbors and whatever, if people were discussing things more, then they wouldn't feel like this such intense, or the pastor, I guess, wouldn't feel like such an intense need to provide and care for every single person who's struggling at this one local body, this one organization. And then maybe that's, a bit of why he might feel so like this such intense pressure, or not pressure, but just feel overwhelmed in this responsibility for all these people who, quote, need him, and that he might feel like he needs to leave his family or neglect his children or whatever it may be. But rather, if all wonderful Christians are surrounding and doing the one another's with all these wonderful Christians ministering to one another, I think that would be so helpful for all Christians and for God's glory, to not have it be like, people are getting neglected, or, I have to go to this one person for my one source of encouragement, or, getting all my needs, met, and, I have to meet with the pastor, and I have to do this or that. And then to, speak to the whole, when you wake up and all the different tasks that you're doing. Yes, all of this wonderful life is ministry. And even if you're a child or whatever you're doing in life, you can glorify God and minister to your siblings and minister to your parents by honoring them, and glorify the Lord in all of your schooling tasks, or serving in the family, or around the home, or, whatever it may be.
Amen. And none of this is to say that there is nothing unique about being a pastor. There is something unique about being an officer in God's church. That's one vocation, and that one vocation does have distinct responsibilities from others. The pastor isn't called to do the exact same things as the shoemaker, necessarily, as the shoemaker's in his vocation, or as the mother is in her vocation. They're doing different things, but the point is that all of it is ministry if done to God's glory, and all of it is extremely important. So I'm not flattening it. We're not flattening it and saying that there is nothing special about being a pastor. There certainly is something special about it, just like there's something extremely special about being a mother of children in the home that you're raising, just like there's something extremely special about being a banker or being a lawyer or being a plumber. There's something special and unique about all of these different vocations, and pastor is one of those special vocations among many that should be done to the glory of Christ, and that should be done as ministry to the glory of Christ along with everything else.
No, amen. And if anything, it's heightening, it's raising all these other vocations to
Yes.
the proper spot.
They're all spiritual.
They're all spiritual. To whether you're a mother or a banker or whatever your vocation is,
Yes.
whatever you're primarily doing in life, all of these things can be done to God's glory and can be done very intentionally, and can be beautiful spheres of ministry.
Yes.
And I think that it just goes to encourage those people in those spheres that you're not wasting your life.
Yes.
I mean, yes, some people for sure are going to waste their lives. They're going to be Christians and they're just going to do, things haphazardly and just not be intentional with their time. Amen. But I think that if you are intentional and if you don't want to, just go about things in a lackadaisical way, then you can do those things in an incredible way to glorify God and to have a joyful life for the Lord.
Amen. Amen. Exactly. So as we live our lives, let's think about ministering in every area of life. And none of this should be a burden to any Christian, because the beautiful good news of the gospel is that Jesus ministers to us before we ever minister to him. Jesus is the servant who served us by living a perfect life, by dying a substitutionary death, by rising from the dead, by ascending on into glory. He is the ultimate minister who ministers to our soul. He has ministered to us, he is ministering to us, and he will minister to us always. And the more we understand that, and the fact that his ministry to us was redeeming our entire selves, that he owns us, that we are joyfully bound to him forever, and that he is our good master. And the more we understand what he has done and how he has ransomed us, the more we understand that all of our life, that there is not a square inch of all of our lives that is not under his lordship, that we should not be ministering out of a heart of gratitude and out of a heart of thankfulness.
Amen. And it's also not to say don't go serve in your local church or don't be involved in certain ministries by any means. I think that it's so beautiful to minister and to serve.
Yes, lead a Bible study.
Yes. Yeah, or your neighbors, or just continually to serve your families or your extended families or friends, or whoever it is that you're around who would need love and encouragement or service or whatever it may be. But it's not to discount any of the other things listed.
Amen. All of this is extremely important. Speaking the gospel word is important. Speaking the scriptures to folks and helping folks understand the scriptures. Once again, doing Bible studies, reading Christian books. That's wonderful ministry. Helping people with needs, helping them move is ministry. Helping to clean up, the building that you meet in on the Lord's Day, whatever that is, that's ministry. But also, our whole point here is that what you do on the athletic field or the athletic court, that is ministry as well. What you do in your home in the middle of the night when your babies are waking up crying, that is ministry as well. How you love and serve your wife when you get up off the couch and you help to clean up the house and you look her in the eye and ask her how her day is and you care for her, that is ministry as well. All of life is ministry for Christians when we are doing it to the glory of Christ, because he has saved us and he has purchased all of us, not just one little part of us that we do on Sunday mornings or that we do only when we're interacting with Christians who are part of a certain organization. No, all of life is ministry for the glory of Christ and for your happiness in him. Thank you for joining us. for this episode of the Gospel Liberty Podcast.